welcome. This is Rob, and welcome to episode 11 of the Proust podcast, in which Chris and I are going to ramble, I think, a little bit about the last conversation we had with Mark Berry. So, hello, Chris.
Hello, Rob.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Apart from your burnt and cut fingers.
It turns out if you play with fire, you get burned. Who knew?
Who knew? So we had a great conversation, I thought, with Mark Berry, and we spoke about a lot of stuff, but a lot of it centred around this word poiesis, which before pressing record, Chris and I were talking about. And we were sort of unpacking what we think that word might mean in the context of Proust and creativity in general, perhaps. For the sake of the audience, before the podcast with Mark, I had looked at the word poiesis up because I didn't know what it meant. I found a definition which says the emergence of something that didn't previously exist. And Chris and I were talking before that we weren't sure that was quite the way Mark would have seen it.
And I can confirm that is indeed true, because he and I then had a lengthy chat on the old WhatsApps where we was kind of... In fact, I think Rob got off the plane after coming back from London, and his phone went mad with about 55 messages pinging in, which was that group chat that we were having with Mark. So I think you're absolutely right. I think obviously, in case you're just catching up with this chat, obviously it makes sense to listen to that chat with Mark before you listen to this one. So you should maybe stop right now and go and listen to the other one.
Agree with that.
But the reason we were grappling with it was just again thinking about the nature of what we're trying to achieve. So Proust used to do one particular thing, but in trying to kind of map what that might look like again, the first question we find ourselves asking is, what is this relationship between art and spirituality? And how is art in the broadest sense, and I think we'll probably come on to talk a little bit more on that, about that broadest sense of art, because we did talk about that in the podcast as well. But in the broadest sense, art is itself spiritual. Fundamentally, it's dealing with meaning and reaching beyond into that liminal space, just beyond the stuff that's known sometimes, perhaps.
Yeah.
But yes, so there's a lot of that still to be explored. We haven't probably gone there. I'm sure that there's a whole series of discussions still about art and spirituality, which we'll continue to grapple with. But this, the kind of concept that Mark had introduced has been really helpful, as much as anything, because of the way that it forces you to think about things in a different way, is this word poiesis, which is a term that he'd found useful over a number of years. Did you just mention your definition?
Well, yeah. Just to repeat, my definition was, well, not mine. I think it was Wikipedia, probably. Emergence of something that didn't previously exist.
Yeah.
In our chat, though, we were talking about, with Mark, it was more like, I don't know if I would quite have put it in the terms of something that didn't previously exist, because there's a sense of this idea of the potter and the clay, that the pot exists in the clay, it just needs to be formed.
Yeah.
And similarly, the cup in a tree, that the cup is already in the tree, is there, it needs to be uncovered.
Yes.
Or something like that.
One of the questions I was kind of grappling with, because I thought I'd got my head around the poiesis thing through some earlier chats that I'd had with Mark. And then when we ended up, after the podcast, I ended up thinking, did I understand this? So I went again doing that terrible thing, which you should never do, just Googling things, because you get so much information coming in at you.
Yeah.
And in this instance, I mean, because I was coming up with similar definitions to yours, the artist conjuring something from nothing out of their own being or their own practice. So in this sense, it's work that's produced by the artist. It's come up out of them. And I think even more, there's a wider discussion about the different that you can have art that isn't poetic or doesn't arise from poesis.
Yes.
It might be art that's a mimic, or art that doesn't have that sense of being formed out of the ground of the artist's being. So there's a lot in there, just in those few sentences that we could spend all evening unpacking. But I was struggling with that a little bit, because thinking about how does that then map onto spirituality?
Yeah.
It maps onto individual kind of talent or individual sensitivity or individual skill.
Yeah.
But how does it? So that's why I was going back to Mark. So tell me more. Am I missing this? What am I?
Yeah.
Am I not seeing here? And that's what the chat then turned to.
I'm wondering, where's that in sort of when the definition is individualized, or I turn it in on myself that I'm the source of this creativity. Is that what you? I'm not explaining myself very well. I'm just trying to repeat
I think
back.
you are. I think that you've hit the nubbin right on the head there, Rob.
But it doesn't.
It's the self-centered nature of art. Potentially that definition reinforces, doesn't it? Is that what you mean?
I think so. Because then does it mean you're denying the role of the creator with a capital C? Are you denying or ignoring the role? A friend of mine, whether he would still say this, he definitely has in the past said to me, and he is very musical, would say that all art all creativity originates from the creator, i.e. God, the divine, whatever you want to call it, him, her, it. That everything, and it's how you use that creativity that you have been given. So regardless whether however you use it, it ultimately came from the creator. Okay, I'm prepared to accept that.
Well, I suppose that does chime with what one of the things Mark was saying. I'm just trying to remember whether he actually said it in the pod chat or that was just outside of it, because he was making that same kind of equivalence that fundamentally we are the product of God's creativity.
Yeah.
Or the creativity of, if we're not happy with the God language, the creativity of the great unfolding nature that birthed us.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, what we're doing within, I think, again, not wanting to paraphrase what Mark said, but I think what he was describing is poesis as being our equivalent of that. So we're just demonstrating the same kind of the same sensibilities, the same kind of skill set of the substance that we were made in the first place. Because I certainly have heard that discussion before, that all art is originates in the creator. I'm not sure that I suppose one of the problems of any rule or any categorical statement is that it's too categorical, isn't it? It's too simplistic.
Yes, it is. I agree with that.
I'm sure on some level that is absolutely true. I think at some level that is not. I'm not sure.
But everything about creation, it depends. Again, I don't want to get all. Everything about creation has been distorted by, again, depending what language you like, the fall with a capital F. Yeah. So everything in creation has been distorted by the fall, and therefore that creativity has been distorted by the fall, if not broken by the fall, and that
interesting. But that also takes us back to another discussion about dualism and non-dualism, and the language of the fall being a kind of a Greco-Roman imposition and all that kind of stuff. The Richard Rohr, the sort of, because I think just before we started this podcast, you were mapping some of this onto ideas of salvation as well.
Well,
can you say a bit more about that?
Well, I suppose it came from what Mark said, that the process of creating, I think this is what we said, isn't it? The process of creating a piece of art is, you said this, it's both an event and a process. So it happens and is happening. So writing a poem or painting a picture or whatever there is an output, if you like, but there's also is the creation actually the whole process of doing that. And he was talking about was it Jackson Pollock and the process of the process of being in an environment where something good might come out of it, but that's actually putting yourself in a position where this might be a possibility. And I suppose I was thinking of the process of what we might call salvation in a Christian sense. That I think in Paul, I'm no theologian and I'm no biblical scholar, but I do recall that Paul, in his writing, would use the verb or the language of salvation as both an event and an ongoing process.
Yeah.
So one is saved and one is in the process of being saved,
Yes.
Which
so
I kind of like, because it actually suits, I suppose, I don't know, how would you put it, my imagination, I guess.
Yeah.
And it also means that there is hope, because I suppose I look at that's probably the right word, actually, hope, because if I am saved in a one-off event, I'm also, it doesn't fix all my faults, all the broken bits of me, all the bits of rubbish that we don't talk about at parties and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's a process, then I'm open to those parts of me being saved over the course of my life.
Yeah.
So I am saved, but I'm in a process of being saved, I suppose.
So I'll say, interestingly, my immediate response to that kind of the sort of comparison of the two is that I absolutely get why you would, the poesis as event and process, is it something that happens in the moment? I think that was some of the chat we were having, wasn't it? And I'm thinking about, points at which I've been emotionally kind of exploded by an encounter with a piece of art, or even in the creation of that piece of art, I find myself weeping or something. And how those things that they're very much of the moment, or how actually that our ability to kind of appreciate that moment might be gathering and developing, and in the process of developing your as an artist, I suppose, or as a maker, whatever. Like we were saying before, these words can get very kind of elitist and pompous very quickly, can't they? But so in doing that becomes the unfolding event. But having said that, my other reaction to what you're saying, as someone who kind of has found his place at the moment within the Celtic tradition, where salvation is not about recovery from original sin, but it's about reconnection with the truest sense of who we already are.
Yes. By the way, I would completely agree with that. I didn't put that in words, but I would. If somebody gave me the choice and said, "Are you being saved from whatever original sin is, the doctrine of original sin, or are you being saved into the person you were created to be?" I think I prefer the second one.
Well, me too. Absolutely, me too. I mean, that's the one that's kind of, and it feels such a to
Otherwise,
me that those.
Go on, sorry, I interrupted you.
So, well, the language around that whole thing, I found such joy in, such generosity, such And that all feels. It's interesting that we're talking about this in the context of the art, because that truest sense of who we are, the way that you might describe the language you would use to do that, the only way that I can think of that you would describe the depth of that is through art. It's through poetry, in my sense. Because it's the way that art enables us to reach just one step, or sometimes several steps beyond our understanding. And it's that multi-layered, multifaceted. It draws you into something else, and then behind that there's something else. And the best art has that capacity. I think, accepting that we're all kind of moved. We're all, the language of that art is very subjective, and what would be moving to you is probably not the same thing that would be moving to me.
But I think we could all, whatever moves us in that sense, we would all accept that there are certain things that do move us, and it could be the same scene in a movie that we watch over and over again, and we know it verbatim, and yet every single time it comes on, we end up in a heap, upset and sad. Well, not sad, just emotional. It's an outpour, And I suppose part of me wants to see that as a glimpse into, how do I put this? A glimpse of how, and again, for the sake of the creator, God, the divine, the spirit, or whatever, is moving in that moment to prompt, or this outpouring is part of the uncovering of who you are. Because actually, these emotions, you're given these emotions, and they're about who you are. So that scene, or that poem, or that picture, or a sunset, or whatever the thing is that constantly moves you, is, for me, that God-given thing, which is part of your personality, and also part of you, but also part of God, if you want to put it like that. I don't...
Yeah. It's funny, one of the
sounds very fluffy. It sounds very fluffy, doesn't it?
Let me read you this. Let me read you a quote then. It was because when I was kind of firing all these questions back at Mark, he sent me a quote by Makoto Fujimura, who the famous book, which I have not read, I have now ordered, because I thought, well, if I'm going to quote, then I really need to read it, which is the Art and Faith, A Theology of Making, is the book. And this is the quote that Mark sent me. Art making to me... we can put a link to this in this book and at the end if anybody else is interested. I'm sure lots of people listening to this have read it anyway. Art making to me is a discipline of awareness, prayer and praise. Imagination gives us wings to create, but it's through Christ's tears and the invitation to the feast of God that we can become partakers in the new creation. I read that and I want to cry.
Read it again. Read it again before you cry.
The quote's longer, but I'll probably be crying at the same time. I can multitask. Okay. Art making, to me, and this is Makoto Fujimura, is a discipline of awareness, prayer and praise. Imagination gives us wings to create, but it's through Christ's tears and the invitation to the feast of God that we can be partakers in the new creation. So he goes on to describe how he takes notes of his process. So he makes notes, it's there in the slow process of preparing the pigments and glue, and how he must learn to use the particular paints that he uses. So it's in every kind of detail of his things that he's making that are part of that. For him, I suppose the poetic, the poema.
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess, that...
I wish I'd written that.
Well, me too. But that is venturing into that same idea, isn't it? That somehow in making art, we're not trying to kind of sell God. We're not trying to to even conjure God into existence. What we're doing is just accepting that God is. God is there. It's there in our own ground of being, but it's only through the process of focusing on that ground of being in the making of art. So it's not only, but that is one of the ways that we might uncover the nature of who God is. Possibly. Discuss.
No, yeah, discuss. No, I'm very happy to buy into that because we're participants, aren't we? We're not bystanders watching. We're invited to participate in the act of creation.
Yeah,
I think. I know that sounds quite grandiose, didn't it? But that I'm trying to
no,
put
I
words
absolutely agree with
to.
you. I think it goes back to that the sort of the Celtic language, the Celtic tradition that I would use and found such hope in, that if we are all kind of made in some sense in the image of or through I think what's the phrase, we have our being through
Yes.
God,
Yeah.
then some that suggests fairly. I think there's enough scriptural evidence, if we want to use that,
Yes.
to suggest that we're all carriers of some embers, some probably more than that, in the truest part of ourselves.
Yeah.
We are made of this ineffable something else that is sometimes referred to as God.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, I think it's one of the quotes that I love above everything. I can't even remember who it's by, though, of course, because it's gone out of my head. Is this idea that we discover God not through addition, not through taking in stuff that transforms us, but by subtraction, by taking away. That, interestingly, the idea of the cup being in the tree. The problem is you've just got to get everything out of the way to decipher the cup.
Yes.
It becomes a useful analogy to that same kind of way of seeing the world as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think that's exactly right.
Our salvation, in that broader sense of salvation, is not about. It isn't about an event in the sense that we have moments when we make a decision to go deeper, to kind of deal with things. But much more than that, it's about just letting go, and life will do that to us anyway, a lot of the time. But and hopefully, in the end of all of that, just falling into the arms of a loving God is the way that we, or returning to base, returning to center, returning to what we always were. Whatever kind of language we want to use.
Yeah, I love that.
That's what the tradition brings to me. But I do think that the art within that then becomes, and particularly for me, obviously poetry, becomes the only way I can really describe or play with those ideas. So that to me is the gift of those things. But poesis itself, then, for me, which I think is what Mark would agree with, although he may email in and say, "You've got it all wrong, boys." Poesis is that point when what we do connects with those deeper parts of ourselves.
Yes.
That would be my working definition at the moment.
Yeah.
That it's about the deepest sense of meaning that we're able to connect with, and a little bit beyond that.
So in terms of, I think at one point we spoke about, there's a sense in which all of this is both now and not yet, isn't there? This is all, and I suppose in our unpacking of what Proust might be, as I was driving home today listening to the podcast again, I was thinking to myself, how do we create environments where people get to explore this? Because actually I think this poesis I like the idea of that being in some sense a foundation of what Proust could be. This sense of uncovering, this sense of intentionality, because it's not by luck that this is happening. This is we're intentional about the process of creating something. Is that fair?
I think so, but can I answer that question by hitting you with another buzzword, another term?
Please do.
This word theopoetics.
Yes.
Which I think I mentioned in the podcast, but we didn't.
You did.
Obviously, we didn't really go there. But I've found, again, the language of theopoetics to be really helpful. So here's my working definition. It's what happens when art, form, style intersect with spirituality with a focus on community, change, and embodiment. So I'll say a bit more about that, but it's about seeking to make the practice of poiesis, so meaning making, as defined in the way that I wrote about it at the time, one of the central parts of life. And it's not new. It's not another way of doing God stuff. Rather, it points to things that have always happened and always been part of religious practice.
Yes.
So the whole practice thing, might then become sort of the art that we make might be seen as a prayer, or it might be seen as a protest against injustice.
Yeah.
Or it might be a means that we become hopefully and consciously engaged with culture, or with our location, or with our friends. So it might be allow us to connect with each other in a deeper way.
Yeah.
But there's other quality of embodiment which I've thought a lot about, because I'm a man of a certain age in northern British male, so we don't really do touchy-feely stuff. Or traditionally, we don't really do that very well. So my relationship with my own body is kind of one step removed, really. And I suppose some of the Christian ideas of the fall and which we briefly referred to earlier might underline that somehow the body is wrong and sinful and broken and sexual, right, and all of that kind of stuff that kind of gets in the way. Whereas what the theopoetics sort of idea is calling us back to see the way that our bodies are central to the way that we feel and the way that we experience, particularly the way we experience mystical things. Yeah. We feel that in our bodies as much as we feel that in our heads.
Okay, so when you talk about, sorry, I just wanted to clarify something. When you're talking about embodiment, you are literally talking about our body and how it interacts with everything around it.
Absolutely, yes.
Right, that's okay. That's really helpful. Okay.
Yeah. So it's about I suppose how we feel in parts of our bodies, our relationship to art that we're seeing. So the impact of that and the way that we respond to that physically as well as intellectually. And I suppose traditionally, or stereotypically, we might say that skill set probably is not very male. It tends to be more understood as a more female kind of ability as well. So and then finally it's poetics and art as radical engagement. So all about these kind of another set of buzzwords like intersectionality and how art has this way of connecting with brokenness. And allowing people who would traditionally not have a voice to have that voice. So I love the way that those things can come together. That spirituality, and again, it probably goes back to my initial reaction to my misunderstanding of what poiesis was that we were thinking about it as potentially arising from an individual artist's kind of person, and it seemed to kind of be very much about the focus on the skill of an individual in potentially quite an elitist and isolating way. And this is the absolute opposite of that. It's about how art arises from community, and it creates almost like apolitical spaces where people can interact and sort of make truth together. So I think that there's a whole kind of bit in there that we didn't. Yeah.
No, it's just sorry. I was just thinking about the stuff that probably I've said this to many people, and my old A-level English teacher used to describe Hamlet as it's not a play, it's a way of life. And obviously, as a bunch of 17-year-olds, we all used to just smirk and think, "You pretentious." Well, we probably didn't use pretentious because that's far too good a word. But actually, now I look back, I go, okay, I might not think that about that particular play, but I get it. I get why you said that. So I don't know, I went down a rabbit hole there, and now I can't remember why. But it was this sense of there is so much more to this stuff than just words. And, these are things that you can constantly churn over, constantly work at, constantly tinker with or explore just the meaning of it all. And that's why it's community. Sorry, where I was thinking, this is why it is this sense that you can just enjoy it, but actually part of the wonder of all art, whether it's a TV program, cinema, books, is that that's why they have groups, you have reading groups and reading clubs to discuss things. Because actually what we really want to do is understand what that meant to you or what it meant to me, and the bits that I enjoyed or I didn't enjoy or the bits that I don't understand. People do that. That's why you have scholars who just keep on reading the same book over and over and over and over again to get deeper into it.
Do you think then that this discussion, this kind of idea of poesis and theopoetics, and does that bring us any closer to an idea of the sort of art that we would be looking to showcase through?
I think it absolutely does. I mean that. I'm not just answering that in affirmative because that might be what we want to say, but I genuinely think it does, because I suppose part of me was thinking, I want Proust to reach out to those people and groups of people and communities of people who are willing to explore their art or the creation of their art or whatever that art might look like with this intersection, this idea of that there's something going on here and we want to explore it with other people. So it's not about Rob being a fantastic painter, and therefore he just wants to showcase his wonderful art. And so, and people go, aren't you marvellous, Rob? You've got such a gift. Actually, what I really want is Rob to either do something a bit like Mark said, do something he can't do, or invite a group of people into his art making to enable them to explore their creativity in a new way that they've never done before.
I think that's beautifully put. And as you were saying that, I was feeling the excitement. I was feeling it in my body.
There we go.
Yes, I was feeling the excitement again for that we had when we first started this project some time ago now, where we started thinking, well, what is it for? Why are we doing this? And that whole discussion about, that I'd have to try and write down the phrase of, I'll pull it out at some point, that it's about reconnecting. It's the intersection where art connects with that whole idea again.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I think we referred to earlier was the passing reference to the elitism of art and how it, and we talked about it in the podcast, didn't we? How it's become a rarefied place of exclusion for lots of people, but probably particularly for people in marginalised groups who get excluded from everything. So there's something in there too about how art can be deliberately inclusive.
Yes.
But by the same token, there are, in terms of showcasing and there will be some people who have something to. I don't want to use the word talents and gifts because it's back to that elitist thing, but they'll have something to say that needs to be heard more broadly.
Yes.
But that's not the same as saying we're looking for the next big thing. We're looking for people of huge kind of epoch-shattering gifting and all that kind of language. There's other places they'll find their own way. They'll find success.
Yes.
Yeah. I wonder whether it would be helpful to describe an idea that is in my head at the moment that may never happen. Which, as part of this discussion, the ongoing discussion about Proust, we're starting to kind of get some ideas of a broad map of the sorts of different things we want to include. And obviously, it was the more traditional showcasing through publishing, through doing a limited number of books, through looking to find music and helping people plug that into a way that other people can listen to it. All of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But one of the ways was we were thinking about is Proust live events. And I've been picking away at this for a long time, thinking about it and wondering how that could work. And one of the sort of, or the working kind of hope I have at the moment is that we'll choose a theme, we'll send out a call. Look, we're going to do 2 days in this location. On the end of the second day, we'll be putting on a live event to which we invite as many people as want to come. But in the lead up to that, we will be working together to bring together the elements around that theme that individuals bring to the table. So, for example, one of the themes that I would really like us to explore first is something around mycelial networks, inspired by some chat and thinking that I'd already had around naturalistic kind of analogies for life. So the dominant idea that perhaps comes through the Enlightenment is Darwin's idea of the survival of the fittest. So everything that we think about in terms of our society is that it's about the ascendancy, rising to the top. It's about people scratching for success. It's about you get ahead if you kind of through competition, through overcoming the opposition, kind of thing, and that's given the legitimacy through a Darwinian idea, which is probably misunderstood anyway, arguably, because that's the survival of the fittest narrative. It's not about individual kind of generations. It's about the evolution of through natural selection and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's a different discussion. So that idea is so powerful, and one of the reasons it's a good fit with our current kind of destructive pattern of industrialized society. We are living in a world that where only the fit survive. And we're doing that through conquest, through exploitation, etc., etc. So that's one analogy. The other analogy, though, which is it comes through these ideas of mycelial networks, and mycelial networks being the body of fungus that lives below the soil. This something like a third of all life on the planet is fungal. So we're not talking about a small part of our natural world.
Is this the stuff that people they talk when they say people? This sounds flippant. How trees talk to each other.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
I remember reading it in a book called called Overstory, but I can't remember what his name is. Richard something. Somebody Power. Right. It's called Overstory, and it was ultimately about trees.
Yeah, I mean the whole. It's one of those things. I think that the earlier research seemed to suggest that trees were communicating at some level with each other within forests, within old growth natural forests, not within plantations, because these things need to be developed over a long time. So where there's ancient forest, there's all sorts of amazing kind of things that people have discovered, like some large ancient trees will actively support the trees around them by sending nutrients to them when they need them. But the interesting thing is they do that through mycelial networks.
Yeah.
So this is a fungal sort of network of connected tendrils through the subsoil that is a different animal entirely, a different creature, a different sort of whatever the word is to the tree.
Yes.
But actually, it operates in symbiosis to the trees and to other things.
Mind-boggling, isn't it?
So but what we're describing here is how an ecosystem is entirely interdependent. So it's not that one survives by overcoming the other; it's entirely the opposite.
Yes.
So it gives this imagery of how actually we exist. We're only able to survive because of the commune, because of the fact that we're other creatures, other parts of the natural world are supporting the way that we live. And if we destroy that connection, then we destroy everything. That's the whole idea. So which again maps entirely in my mind back onto those ideas of the ground of being God.
Yeah.
And how actually we are held together in this symbiotic relationship with all living things.
Yes.
And the nature of that communication, the nature of that being is itself divine. So that's my
Yeah.
working theory. Again, back
Yeah.
to my fits very nicely with my my Celtic tradition as well. So I love all that.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Sorry.
this is a very long preamble here. So go on, interrupt me if you need to.
No, it wasn't. No. Go for it.
Well, just so my what I'd love to do is that perhaps our first Proust live event would be a call out to do this is the theme. It's mycelial networks, it's connectedness, it's how we live in unity with one another, and fundamentally, in unity with God. And then ask, as broadly as we can, has anybody got any ideas, any thoughts? Can anybody come and bring some things to the table? And then we spend 2 days constructing an event made of all those individual ideas, made of all, so what you would hope is that there would be poets, there would be musicians, there would be artists, there would be photographers, there would be all sorts of people who would bring elements to that discussion, and we thread that together into an event, and that becomes then the final part, the sort of the orgasmic kind of triumph that is at the end of that. Well, it's very embodied after all.
Yeah, absolutely. Matron.
But in doing that, then, in bringing those elements together, what we're trying to demonstrate is that what we're doing is it's not the individual parts that we're focusing on. It's how those things interact. It's bringing them together so that we're all greater than the sum of the parts. We're all adding power to one another. We're all kind of planning things together, constructing things together. But it would be quite natural that out of that we were also generating resources.
Yes.
We're generating, sort of film. We're generating music. We're generating written material.
Yes.
That then becomes a resource that other people might be able to use.
Absolutely. Yes.
Which is pretty much exactly what used to happen with Proust.
Yeah.
When Proust was previously doing, it was materials that were often being generated as part of the alternative worship events that were happening at Greenbelt Festival or elsewhere. So in many ways, that is very much following within the tradition of what Proust was.
I like that. I mean, Mark did speak about his pocket liturgy, Navigatio, didn't he? And said that's where it came from. It came from their community doing something. I wasn't sure when he spoke about, I don't know, whatever, the patron saint of navigation, Bethel, what was her name? Beverly or something? Brenda.
Brendan, not Brenda.
I must have misheard then.
Is there a Saint Brenda? I'm going to have to look that up now.
Why shouldn't there be? Why?
I really hope that she's the patron saint of, I don't know, dishwashing or something. No, there's a breeder, of course, but I'm not sure there's a Brenda.
That'd be a brewing.
We need to find one. We need to find a Brenda.
It's Brendan. I do apologise, and I've just brought the whole thing crashing down to earth, haven't I? I fail to see what's so funny. You're just dismissing the entire world of people called Brenda. Is it only legitimate if they're called Brendan? Well.
We need to kind of find a Brenda and make it a saint. We just do.
We have to. Well, there we go. I mean, let's face it. That's what it.
Interestingly enough, I have been to an island a few times now, just in the Ross of, just off the Ross of Mull, which is thought to have been the site of St Brendan's Monastery, and it's still got kind of beehive cells and all sorts of things there. So it's a fascinating place. Anyway, that's beside the point.
It is.
So that's I suppose. Anything else from the chat with Mark that is worth mentioning now, or still fresh in the head?
I'm sure there is, but I'm also conscious that what you've just said.
Pie in the oven.
I've got dinner in the oven, but quite apart from anything else, I actually think that that invitation you've just put out there to do something is a really ideal place to leave this episode 11, because actually we are out here now in many ways inviting that conversation, aren't we? So we've said it. You said it now. You can't take it back. It's good.
I had absolutely no intention of saying that, but it just
I'm glad you did.
It's useful to illustrate the sort of thing that
And I love the intentionality of it. I love the fact that
accidental nature of it.
Well, yes, but there's also it touches on what Mark said about the creation story or myth, however you like to describe it, where God said, "And this is good," as if there was a chance it wasn't going to be. And I particularly like, because it led me down the road of when he created man, as in humanity, he said it was very good. And what I particularly like after that is that, of course, and just to make the point, he then created the ultimate human, which was female. There's no, on the basis that everything that went afterwards improved on the thing before, I think it shuts up every man if he thinks that he's the most important
thing. You're adventuring into very, very dangerous territory here. And I think it's only because you're calorie starved and you need to.
So I would invite people to contact us in any way they can. Probably best on the Facebook group, I suppose. Although other methods are available, that's about the only one we've really got. And either message. I suppose they can private message either of us or do it as an open discussion. But if you've got anything you want to add to this conversation, and there's loads more we could talk about from our podcast with Mark, but this seems a really good place to, I don't know, leap off.
Indeed.
And say, I love the idea of us actually producing something and there being... this came out of this particular event. Love it. I think that's...
I'll mention that, brother.
Go for it.
Right. Okay, then. Well, I shall hit the usual kind of end button, and I will wish, you every joy in your pie.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you all next week or when we next do a podcast. Yes, bye, everyone.
Actually, we should mention that one of the things that we are thinking of doing next, which we did refer to in the last podcast, is a bringing together of poets.
Yes.
So I think we are particularly interested to reconnect with poets who were part of the old poetry project, and just if you've got some stories to tell you about what being involved in that was helpful for, and then what that's led you into, that would be lovely. But just generally, I think we will be, just get in touch if you want to be part of that event, which will obviously be online. Otherwise, I will be knocking on other people's doors, but that just means that I'm only knocking on people's doors that people I know already. So it'd be really great to hear from people that I don't have
fantastic.
the immediate contact details of, I should say.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. All right then. Cheers,
Thanks,
then,
everyone.
folks. Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye.